What is up, everybody? As you guys probably know, if you have no self-control like me, I really did want to wait to the announcement to kind of get acquainted with all the specs and the body of the GH6. But I'll leave him unnamed YouTuber from Japan released his video a little early, unlisted, and a lot of people got their hands on it. I really hope that guy's doing okay and this doesn't affect him too negatively. But for us, we were able to really pick through the vast majority of what this camera's got going on. I'm pretty sure you guys are pretty familiar with the leaked images from yesterday and the specs that were leaked as well. So instead of going through bit by bit of every little thing that I think of, I just want to talk about my top things I'm excited about, the top things I'm a little disappointed with, and then a couple of things we're going to have to wait and see on. So yeah, let's get right into it. Let's start positive, you know. There's a lot of negativity surrounding this camera and any camera release, and just remember, the more cameras that are released, the more camera companies that are out there and doing well, the cheaper and better those products are going to be for us. And so even if you use Sony or you've moved on to Lumix full frame, this camera is still relevant and can be really exciting for lots of different reasons. So anyway, let's get into those top features, and the first one for me is kind of broad, but it's just the overall video quality, you know. Amazing frame rates, amazing resolutions, Apple ProRes internally, very cool. The video quality seems amazing. The codecs, the frame rate options, you know, 5.7K 60, 4K 120, these were things that I considered basically, I wouldn't say the bare minimum. I would say 4K 120 was the bare minimum, but they went almost all the way to 6K, and I think that's really amazing. I'm really excited. The GH5 is great, but 4K 60 at only 8-bit was definitely a limiting factor for someone who really loves using Vlog. And then the S series cameras are great because they do have 10-bit 60, but there's a 1.5 times crop. So do you want 8-bit full frame, well, full Micro Four Thirds frame, or do you want a 1.5 times crop with 4K 10-bit 60? Now you don't have to choose anymore. The next thing I wanted to talk about was photo quality. Now, I was told a lot by a lot of people that higher than a 20 megapixel sensor was not possible for a Micro Four Thirds format, even though I was pretty sure that was not accurate. And clearly I was right. So they put 25 megapixels in this 4/3 camera, and to me, I'm sitting here thinking this is kind of the perfect amount. And the reason I say that is because if it was just 20 again, I don't think we would be able to get to some of these higher quality recording modes in video. But even for photos, it's just about, if not slightly better than a lot of those 24 megapixel full frame cameras, which, you know, I think that's just a good optical thing to say, hey, we can actually provide the same number of megapixels as a full frame camera. And I also am kind of convinced that more pixels and more pixel density doesn't always mean worse low light. And the A7S III compared to the A7 IV, I think, is a good example where the A7 IV with its like 50 megapixels is sometimes better than the 12 megapixels. And so I don't know how many people are going to be using this camera for stills, but if you do, 25 megapixels for that little bit of extra crop, that little extra bit of resolution, and then of course the sensor shift giving you 100 megapixels is going to be pretty handy. Anyway, number 3 for my top features is just all the little improvements and iterations on the iBiz, the design, features, all the stuff from the S series cameras that they sort of innovated and added into the cameras that are really nice. Sensor shift that we just talked about being one of them. And just the overall refresh of the camera and updating and boosting of pretty much everything across the board. Like I talked about yesterday, even the mount of the camera has 6 rivets instead of 4 to make it just that much more robust and solid and professional and I think that's really awesome. Now on to my top disappointments, as well as some of the top disappointments I've seen kind of across the board. And let's just rip the Band-Aid off, and that would be, it's still just the DFD, depth from defocus, contrast-based autofocus system. And now I've actually got really decent results with my S5 in that DFD mode, and I think the GH5 Mark II was amazing, and this is supposed to be even better than that. It always is better. Like if you go back to and get a GH4, you will see how far the AEF has come on Panasonic cameras. But I just think personally that anybody who autofocus was a deal breaker for has moved on already, you know? And if you are still with Panasonic, autofocus is clearly not your priority, and they clearly put the money and research and development into other aspects. So is it disappointing? Yes. Would I like to see LiDAR autofocus like I predicted, or some other type of hybrid autofocus? You know, it would have been nice, but personally, it's not make or break for me, and I don't think most people still putting up with Panasonic autofocus, it's a big deal breaker for them either. The other thing, and this is kind of just a personal thing, if and when I get the GH6, I'm sure I'll get used to this one, but the CF Express Type B card slot is not my favorite. I'm a big SD card believer. There's some insane SD cards out there, but I do understand the value and the utility of a CF Express card. I just wish, and I can't remember what camera did this, but I believe there was a camera that had the option for a CFS Express card or 2 SD cards, and with the GH6, it's 1 CF Express and 1 SD card. So I really don't love when they do mixed media like that, when you've got 2 different types of cards, but it's probably not the biggest deal. But for me, I was like, I wish there was 2 SD cards in there. Like I said, one CF Express and 2 SDs would have been ideal for me. And the third kind of disappointment for me, and I might even be wrong about this one because the wording is kind of confusing, but it doesn't sound like there's a traditional dual gain sensor in the camera. It sounds more like, I don't know, it sounds like there's 2 levels, but they combine them for better noise reduction with 2D and 3D algorithm. You know, like it just seems overly complicated when we've already got the GH5S with an amazing low light sensor. And the big part of that, small part of it, is the low megapixel count at just 10 megapixels. But the more relevant side of it is the dual gain sensor. It's got a low and a high gain, and this might have that as well, but it's just confusing, and without the official announcement, I'm not really sure I understand how it works. It might be better because the biggest thing with the dual gain sensor is, you know, you start at your low base, you slowly increase, and the noise slowly gets worse, and then at a certain point it resets. Maybe with what the GH6 has going on, it's more of an even distribution of noise and more predictable and logical and intuitive. But again, I'm just not 100% sure on that one. So maybe that's a disappointment, and maybe in the future when we know more, that'll be better. And lastly, I think there's a few things we're going to have to kind of wait and see if they perform as well as we thought. And I think that first one is the ISO. You know, the video did have some examples, and it did show the camera doing a lot better than the GH5 Mark II, for example. But I would love to see how it compares to the GH5S, which is almost as good as the full-frame cameras. I would like to see how it compares to the S-series cameras, the S5, the S1H, with their full-frame sensor and their dual-gain sensors. So we'll have to see just how that ISO performance is on the GH6. Is this a more controlled environment? Pretty good in low-light camera, but not a monster like some of the full-frame cameras to distinguish it? We'll have to see. The second we'll have to wait and see on is the body design. Now, I think it's super well laid out. It looks super amazing. No one's really talked about the tally light, but there's a tally light on it, which is really cool, so you can see your recording from the front. but it is big. It's a bit heavier, a fair bit heavier than the S5. It's a fair bit heavier than the GH5 or GH5S. And I mean, the grip looks like it's really comfortable, but the weight, I guess, is it too big, and does it go against the, spirit of Micro Four Thirds? Again, Micro Four Thirds wasn't always just budget and small. That was only a part of the design philosophy, and this is just a progression and an evolution of that. And so, personally, I don't have a big problem with larger camera bodies and larger lenses. I use the GH5 with a cage and the Leica 10 to 25, Leica 25 to 50. I use the S5 with a cage and a 24 to 70. So I'm no stranger to like large cameras, large lenses, but some people I think will be turned off by it, especially the photographers we talked about earlier. I don't know if anyone's going to be buying this huge video monster just to get an extra 5 megapixels. So maybe a successor to the G9 is going to accompany this in the near future. We'll have to see. And, the last thing is just the computational stuff. We've got computational noise reduction, 2D noise reduction, 3D noise reduction, new AI-based DFD, which is supposed to be 5 times faster. We've got, super high dynamic range modes, which kind of combines what seems like a high and low gain sensor into one crazy image that you have to start at 800 ISO minimum to use, or is it 2000 ISO minimum to use? Maybe. Anyway, you get my point. There's a lot of this AI computational photography and video features in this camera. And that's super exciting because if you follow like Tony Northrup, which I know he's not the most popular guy sometimes, but he's right about the computational side of these cameras. Your phones can do so much more computational stuff internally than even the A1 most expensive Sony camera you can buy for like $8,000. And so the fact that your DSLRs, DSLMs aren't doing basically anything seems like a huge missed opportunity. Now, the GH6 is doing it, but again, we're gonna have to wait and see on whether that stuff actually works well. So, yeah, I think that's my list. Honorable mentions for, top disappointment. I got a really quick mention. I did have a pipe dream that there was gonna be an internal ND filter in this camera. Take out the shutter, put an ND in place, but it looks like that didn't happen. So honorable mention on the top disappointments, but otherwise, I'm pretty impressed with this. I was really wondering if they were going to be able to impress people or bring people back from the full frame cameras, back from other manufacturers. And once some of those top disappointments get addressed, or we wait and see on some of those things that we're unsure of, I think this camera just might do it. So yeah, guys, thanks for stopping by and continuing this discussion with me. I guess I'm just going to upload a video every day this week. So, what am I going to do the next couple days? Maybe nothing, but it's been fun making a quick video like this, talking about the news every day. But don't worry. I'm not going to make a habit of this. So this is just Panasonic week, The GH6 is coming out soon, and it'll be here any day now. I can't wait to see the presentation. And like I said, thanks for stopping by, guys. If you like this video and you want to see more Panasonic news, Panasonic reviews, tests, lens reviews, all kinds of filmmaking stuff, definitely hit the subscribe button, and I will see you in the next video.